The sovereignty and providence is important in Milwaukee because there are a lot of disparities within the community. There are a lot of issues that SDC tackles on a daily basis.
I came here today because I was really excited about the work that SDC is doing and the fact that the summit was bringing together over 500 people, a great way for our team to network as well as learn lots of new information.
You know, every time we have a summit on poverty, what we're trying to do is just plant a seed in someone's head that they walk away and think a little differently about what they're doing, because it's going to take all of us, and all of us do a little something different. We've been evolving for 60 years. We've been learning for 60 years. And we're still learning.
Our comrade, our educator, and our soldier for diversity, a highly sought out speaker at colleges and conferences nationwide. Dr. Michael Benitez is a nationally acclaimed scholar, practitioner, and educator in the field of diversity. Dr. Benitez has authored book chapters and articles on identity development, hip-hop culture, cultural centers, cultural and ethnic studies, institutional research, campus climate, and faculty development. He is the co-editor of the anthology Crash Course, Reflections on the film Crash, for critical dialogues about race, power, and privilege. He's contributed to online magazines, scholarly databases. I could go on and on and on and on. But I want to say over the last 2 decades, Dr. Benitez has served higher education in different capacities, including academic affairs, student affairs, diversity and inclusion. He currently serves as Vice President for Diversity and Inclusion and Associate Professor of Multicultural Education at Metropolitan State University of Denver. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you Dr. Michael Benitez, Jr. All right. My friend.
Yes, ma'am.
Work that work.
Oh, Miss Abra, stay dope. Stay dope. James, wherever you at, let me, fam, you killed it. Also, a shout out to my dude Thomas. If you still here, my dude, you killed it too. And then lastly, give it up for E-Money, for Erica. And so here I am about to set it off, Erica did set it off part 2. And so I'm going after her, but here's the beauty of this. We're going to have some critical fun. So thank you for the invitation. Gratitude for trusting me with the space. Let's take this up. I'm going to first acknowledge, all my relatives, my indigenous peoples here. I myself, I'm Afro-Taino Boricua. And so let me introduce myself in my native tongue. Usa wayu wakyao diri. Mike Benitez. You ain't gonna hear a lot of Taino Arawak out there. And before I set this up, let me, the poets, when they got me excited, so I said, I'm gonna start with a piece. So I could contextualize. So this is called a different type of migration, because we're going to get into some of the inner and cross-cultural frameworks and communications and how we show up. And as a post-colonial scholar, my role is to rupture spaces, is to rupture power, to rupture systems. So with that said, 1, 9, 8, 3. This is the year I was introduced to skyscrapers and sidewalks, tall bricks and cellular buildings. Yes, rats. Yo, rats, the size of cats. Pigeons with more courage than hawks. Customs, yo. Customs of all sorts. Veiling, hiding, pain, hurt, lust. A poverty not so poor but rich, rich yet poor, like limiting self from being people who look like me, who speak like me, who act like me, but who are not me. You see, because loss of culture ain't no joke. And cultural genocide is the result of white cloaks, blue suits, blue and red tie bearers. Yes, this is the year I experienced a different type of migration, a subtle type, a chosen type, a forceful type, a migratory type. This was my introduction to migration. Pero mira, loco, que, brothers and sisters wanting to spar because I made assumptions. Shirt ripped off, fist clenched, knuckles forged, battle stand, brown face, black face, pero yo te cago encima de carajo, for real, your shirt ripped off, fist clenched, knuckles forged, battle stand, brown face, black face. Now, dude, how was I supposed to know the homie was Dominican? Now, we share differentiated but similar paths of colonial violent histories imposed upon our ancestors, passed down through genetic and metaphysic waves of historic trauma, and on many occasions from our very own mamas and our very own papas. And here I thought everyone speaking Spanish who ended up in the city of no sleep, sleep, hustle, and grind mambo of hip-hop was Boricua. A different type of migration, one of belonging and not belonging, one of citizenship carved in second-class and burial ventures. Not here, build a wall, speak right, boat rider. Not here, build a wall, speak right, boat rider. A different kind of migration, you see, because colonial histories are told by dictators and conquistadores. 1, 4, 9, dos, this. This was the first known hurricane that hit the land of Borinquen, Hurricane Columbus. My ancestors, the Arawak Taino people, will come to know. My ancestors, enslaved African people, will come to know. Violent, cunning, deceptive, but in human form is this idiot they call Chris, who got lost in the sea. It was the deadliest hurricane. Welcome, strangers, red people, sharp swords, kill them all. Welcome, strangers, red people, sharp swords, kill them all. The common thread now Spanish. The other common thread, neocolonialism. You see, Boricua people weren't meant to survive 5 dos, 5 this. This is the number of years the land of Puerto Rico has been under colonial rule. Spanish, English, move family, travel to U.S. Spanish, English, move family, travel to the U.S. 2017. This is the year Hurricane Trump hit the island, but the powers that be called it Maria. Pain, death, despair, and hope. Pain, death, despair and hope. Yo, you see, Boricuas, we everywhere. My island, I leave. My island, I miss you. You see, we don't choose to move. We have to move. We have to migrate so that neoliberal colonizers can buy and build and sell and push out. So we live and remake. So someday we push out, then we live and remake. So someday revolution, independence, revolution, liberation. That's just a different type of migration. Now here we are. Milwaukee, thank you. It's exciting to be here. The last time that I was here, I was speaking at Cardinal Stritch, dope institution. It's unfortunate that it closed. There's some great faculty there, some great practitioners, fantastic students, and it was doing some excellent equity work. I wonder why nobody went to save it. And yet here we are, right? We want to talk about intercultural communications. And I'm just going to give you perhaps a definition, and then we're going to take it from there, right? They refer to intercultural communication as the capacity to communicate with people from diverse cultures, right? to interact effectively, to adapt. But the thing is, nobody talks about internal intercultural communication. Nobody talks about the way we behave in our certain communities and don't learn to communicate with each other, do better communicating with others than with ourselves. Now, because I'm looking around my room and I'm thinking, we're in a very particular space, we're going to get pretty real up in here. Let's put this presentation up. What are we really dealing with? What are we really dealing with, and how do we understand, shift, reimagine what equitable distribution of resources and economic material transformation looks like? We're talking, as I hit in the poem, about 350 years in the US alone, 550 years if we include Latin America. Now, I grew up interesting. Now, I was born in Puerto Rico. I grew up picking my breakfast out of trees. It was some wonderful times. I used to go in the back. Abuelo would come chasing me with a chancla. Y'all know what the chancla is. If y'all don't, somebody tell somebody, man, that's that flip-flop. But we have to delineate, because the flip-flop from the Caribbean is not the same fluffy flip-flop that dogs be eating here in the US. That flip-flop hurts. I used to go and grab the guava and the mango, and used to go, everybody knew each other. And I'm from the mountains. I'm not from the beach, so I'm from the mountains. So we grew everything in the back. Well, mostly everything. A little tougher to grow some things. The chickens was hard to catch, but if I caught you, you couldn't raise chickens like pigs. So you had to be quick. Hence probably why I dug soccer in PR, not baseball, which was wild, right? Everybody looked at me like, that's the outsider. I don't know what's wrong with him. He likes to kick the baseball around. And then I moved here to the US. And when I moved here to the US, to New York, then I ended up in homelessness. And it was my mom and my 3 siblings. And we ended up in a homeless shelter for 2 years, right? But the thing is, when you grow up with a sense of richness culturally, the idea of poverty doesn't hit you if you have the sustainability and the economics around you like the mountains. Right? And so now you come here, and I'm not even putting one and one together because I'm a young cat. I didn't even know I was in a shelter until somebody pointed it out. Now, I was like, yo, man, I go to school bragging like, let me tell you, my bed is right below the stove. And then there's the cabinets, and there's just a whole lot of cereal. Now, it has no sugar, so we gotta go get that. But I was like, I get up and I stand up, and boom, breakfast is right there. But until somebody asked me, yo, where you live? And I was like, right there. And they're like, oh, the shelter? I'm like, I don't know what that is, but yeah, I'm right there. There's a beauty to a certain level of ignorance that allows you to live until you are reminded and othered that you're not the norm. Right? And let me tell you that even today as I talk, I want to talk out of love. And I want to talk out of hope. Unconditional love and hope, because that's what it's going to take to get us to where we need to go. And so we start with this cartoon, and the cartoonist who drew this, I love this, right? Because he kind of says, yo, I thought your people celebrated Black history in the month of February, but my little homie's like, nah, dude, that's for y'all. like I'm Black all year round. And it's this type of shift when we start to enter the realms of communication and the culturalism and these frameworks around how we shift and change and reimagine systems of power and generational wealth. Because look, I just want to be incredibly real. If we were to ask a group of folks to not do anything for 300 years, you can't work, you can't come in, you can't do this, you can't do that, your generational wealth will, woo! And if we don't account that to the point of reparations, if we don't account for that to the point of mending and reconciling and truly reckoning with that history, it can't just be history of history, and it also just can't be, it's going to take time. Where is the material and resource and economic commitment? It's like when people ask me all the time, they're like, Mike, so what do you think about Puerto Rico? Should it be independent or state? Now, look, I'm just going to be real on that. I don't want it to be a state, because same thing is going to happen to Puerto Rico that happened to Hawaii. It's going to be cultural genocide from a standpoint of the practice of culture. And yet, I struggle for it to be independent. I want independence, but independence can't come without economic reparation, because if not, we're going to end up worse than Haiti. And you're just going to have cats and homies and peoples and our cultura killing each other while the White Walkers come in and buy all that out. Right? So keep me where I'm at. Let me be a chameleon that can, swerve across from space to space. Because at the end, if it's one thing that I got that I really want we to hear today, is we still got self-determination. Even though we exist in systems. And it starts with this epistemic change in the way we think. People talk about white supremacy like it's the KKK, when white supremacy is the epistemic, internalized condition of thinking in ways that has nothing to do with you. So let's start there. When honest meets nice. Now look, I've been around. I've lived in Puerto Rico, New York, PA. And it's interesting because when I went to New York, a lot didn't change. Everybody kind of looked like me. Everybody also talked Spanish. I really didn't know that anyone that looked like me could possibly be Dominican. I didn't know somebody could get so angry for calling them Puerto Rican. I like, hey, bro, Boricua, bro. Homie was like, ¿qué? ¿Qué? I was like, my bad, bro. Man, I got scared. I'm like, Marco, disculpa, bro. Right? And then we get to this place, like, he could have just told me, like, no, bro, I'm Dominican. But no, man, he was ready to throw down. And, sometimes I reflect back on that. Like, at 7 years old, you don't see it like that. But, going back, you're like, oh, my God. Like, that 7-year-old kid ripped off his shirt. And didn't even know why. Just because I called them a name that had little to do with something, yet had everything to do with everything, because both the Dominican Republic and PR were colonized spaces. And so when you think about culture, and when you think about me, right, like I'm an interesting cat. Like I'm Afro-Taino Boricua. When you look at my father's side and you take that lineage, man, you got, man, once you get to my grandmother, my great-grandfather, they darker than chocolate. And then you get to my mom's side, and they whiter, they pink. They're not even white, man, they pink. and then you end up with this Creole mix. And then you had a couple uncles who were real like indigenous, and they be like, Junior, no le haga caso, don't pay attention to them, you're Taino. I don't know what the hell that means, but I'm glad you're telling me. But eventually you learn, and so I grew up kind of embracing this Africanness. I grew up embracing this indigeneity, and I grew up struggling to figure out what does Eurocentrism by way of Spanish colonialism as a cousin to Anglo-centric colonialism look like in a post-colonial world. And then you got Latin America that's as diverse as the U.S., actually way more diverse. And we decided to call folks Latino and Hispanics, even though Hispanics is to speak Spanish. Now, I could break all that down, but that's a different story altogether. Latino is Latium. Latium is now Italy. Italy has nothing to do with Latin America. Where the hell did Latino come from? And so we hear bickering over words and not focusing on the real central issue, which is empowerment, uplift, and collective preservation. How do we think beyond who we are? So I've been around the places. Now here I am in PA. I had a sixth sense moment. It was the first time that I saw, well, a lot of white people. I was like, oh my God, they do exist. And not in any bad way, it just hits you. You go to PA, you know, I'm in Wisconsin, but I'm used to it now. I have buffers. I lived in Iowa for 5 years. But you know, you find sanctuary and serenity and a village anywhere. But PA, I need a PA to prepare me for Iowa. I'm gonna just tell y'all right now. And then you end up in Washington, and so you end up with when honest meets nice. Everybody is down and woke and for the cause and about fighting when you start truth-telling. When you start owning your narrative. I want to go back to that piece of owning your narrative, telling the narrative. Institutions get it twisted. I'm not here to belong. I'm here to reclaim. I already belong. I'm here to reclaim. I'm here to take my rightful space and gentrify. I ain't going to gentrify, but I'm going to gentrify. Oh, you think you're just going to run up and own all this stuff? No, I want a piece of that too. Because we can't continue. You know, I looked at the numbers. So Milwaukee is interesting, right? Because to the point, it's one of the poorest cities among the top 50 biggest cities in the U.S. It's like in the top 5, right? You're 40% self-identified as black or African American, 40% as white Caucasoid, 20% of, you know, a mix of everything else. And then you have a minimum wage. Is it still $7.25? Okay. So let me get the numbers right because I am, you know, a statistician to some degree. You know. So if you work for $10 an hour, which is what, $2.75 above the minimum wage for a whole year, you bring up about $21,000, maybe $22,000. The average rent here in Milwaukee is $1,400 for 1,100 square feet. 59% of the property in Milwaukee is rented. So Milwaukee is serving really as a cash cow for real estate inventors without the people. I just need us to sit with that. So when you have, that means if you break that down and you get $1,800 or so a month, and that's $10 an hour, that's $2.75 above the $7.25 minimum wage, then you're left with what? Maybe $200, $300? What the hell you gonna do? But then we hear, you know, blaming folks because they somehow can't figure it out, and we can even lift the minimum wage to at minimum keep up with inflation. Look, man, I'm no John Powell, but there's something wrong with that. And so what can the city and what can we do, right? And getting beyond, right? Because at the end, there's a difference in what poverty looks like. It's not experienced different. It's experienced differently, but poverty's poverty. And this bickering that happens a lot of times in our communities is going to get us in a lot of trouble. It's not going to get us nowhere. So when I say honest meets nice, I'm also talking about the different cultural practices and communication styles. Like when you know, it's interesting because everybody has a nice. When I go to the South, Southern hospitality, they treat me with the love, but they also looking at me like, you know your place, right? We ain't going to get into sundown times, right? I'm going to give you some good breakfast now, but, you know, at 2:30 p.m., they're just no. And then, you know, we roll up to the Midwest where they're like Midwest nice. And the Midwest is real interesting here because it's like it's like aggressive, passive aggressive. It's like if you're passive, it's like folks are passive aggressive. Sometimes they know it, sometimes they don't. But then when they realize it's not hitting you or you're not feeling it, then they get mad. And now they're like being aggressively passive aggressive. It's the most interesting shit in the world. You don't know I'm trying to get under your skin? Let me go harder. And then you go to the West. And the West has a truly nice. The West, man, you know, folks, they're like the adversive nice. Hey, I'll see you later. They so nice. I got to a four-way when I was the dean at a university over there. I got to a four-way, and as I'm walking, I see a car slowing down. Now, regrettably, in this nation, you know, when a lot of us is walking and we see a car slow down, that's regrettably someone, you know, throwing out an epithet. You you this, boom, and then they take off. But then when as he kept going, I was like, here we go again. I was preparing myself. He slows down. I see his hand. I'm like, well, I don't know what this dude is about to do. So I'm getting ready. I finally get to the four-way intersection, and it was like that insurance commercial. The cats were fighting to let me cross. No, you go. No, you go. You go. I'm like, look. Then you got Cali laid back nice, and then you got New York nice. Now, look, we are nice in New York. We're just direct. But you got to be careful with nice in New York because, you know, if you try to cross a light on a red, man, you're probably going to get hit by a car. If you try to cross a light on a green, you might get hit too. So, but this honest piece is where we wrestle, because the moment racism comes up as part of the conversation, the moment that racial disparities come up, nice turns into ugly hecka quick. Even if we say it like this, we're still incredibly angry. So it doesn't matter how we say it, even if we say it like this. So civility comes with this ask that we're intentional about the way we understand and utilize language. Because it doesn't matter how you flip numbers. It doesn't matter how you look at, in this case, immigration, prison industrial complex, segregated schools, because by way of charter schools, because we're forgetting to fund the same public schools, or maybe not forgetting, maybe we're just electing not to fund the public schools that serve the most of our freaking communities. So now we see more segregation in schools today than we did in following the desegregation era of the 60s. I just, right? And I need us to sit with that, especially those of you are out there who are in positions of, well, decision making. All right? When you look at things like immigration, voting rights, it all ends up with a very particular hierarchy that goes from the coloristic, pigmentocratic, dark at the bottom, light at top. And it doesn't matter which category of interlocking systems you're focused on, that's what you end up when you look at the numbers. What's wild is that while you have 40% population that's black and 40% that's white here, white population is 8% poverty. Black population is 30% poverty. So now we've found a common denominator of representation. Now it's not like, well, you got to look at the numbers that are greater than the percentage because A, B, and C. No, same percentage of representation, but for some reason, you know, black folks, they just, you know, like 22% poorer. And we're not even talking about deep poverty. Right? We talked about the $10 an hour. We're not even talking about the $7.25 an hour. But when you look at statistics, this is what you find. You find that the reality is that the average age, of someone at minimum wage is 35. We like to cuff that up to like young students. 88% are not teens, they're 20 or older. 36% are 40 or older. 56% are women. 28% have children. 55% work full time. And on average, they only earn half of their family's total income. Sit with those numbers as we think about what it means to truly uplift and empower a sustainable economic vitality of any given community, hence appreciating the work of like a Reverend Barber. Appreciating the work of even as we go back into the 60s and what that meant, and appreciating and understanding that Dr. King didn't get killed because he was fighting racism. He got killed when he started to teach and white folks started to understand that the fight wasn't very different for them neither. and that they were investing against their own regards and needs. So it's always difficult doing this work in the way we understand communication because, right, you have James Baldwin, my favorite author. And he said, you have to decide who you are and force the world to deal with you, not with its idea of you. Now, that could get you in trouble. Actually, that could get you in a lot of trouble. And then on the flip side, right, it's certain in any case that ignorance allied with power is the most ferocious enemy justice can have. So how do you marry those two into the side of a coin so we could, as part of this intercultural model, think bigger than us, think about serviveness. It's not about me, it's not about you, it's about who we serve and how we serve. Who we serve and how we serve. And that's the piece that we miss a lot. We got to offer ourselves also some grace and pace. We got to have an ability to adapt. You see, when I show up with 10 different personalities in the workplace or even at the crib, translation, my house, or when I show up with these different modalities, it doesn't, for me, I mean, a lot of people call it code switching. I don't think I code switch, I think I'm rubber banding. I am being pulled 10 different directions all at the same time. And I have to be okay with that. So the idea of having multiple personalities is not only something we should try to do, it's something that has been normalized as a result of the way we have to navigate and negotiate systems of power. Yes. That's part of the communication. That's part of that framework. So I'm going to hit on this just briefly because I think people get caught up right now. We're at a very particular time where DEI is a hot button topic. And yet 95% of the people who are talking about this, trying to get rid of it, don't even know what the hell it means. It's like going to a mechanic and being like, excuse me, I'm looking for somebody to bake me a cake. What happened to expertise? What happened to the fact that something like CRT actually was born out of U.S. legal jurisprudence? Yep. And here we are talking about diversity, solely from this celebratory. It's interesting, a lot of places I go, they'll say, Mike, what are you in the mood for? You hungry? And I'm like, yeah, I'm hungry. That's why I switched up my 2.5 pack for a keg. I'm hungry. And then they'll say, what are you in the mood for? Now, I'll say, just something local. I like to support local businesses when I go, to local spaces. And then they'll say, okay, we got great ethnic foods. So I'm like, okay, I just said local. But if you want to go ethnic on me, okay, what you got? They were like, oh, we got this fantastic Indian spot, we got the soul food spot, and we got this spot and that spot. But see, here's the thing. Let me ask y'all a question. I'm going to ask y'all a quick question. I want you to respond to this question. Don't think about it. Don't be like, he's trying to trick me. Just answer. What is your favorite ethnic food? Go. See, all y'all was like, nah, he gonna get me, he gonna get me. He gonna get me. It's interesting, though, because when I ask that question, I'm always perplexed at how much our own people refer to our own food as ethnic. So when I say I'm in the mood for ethnic food, I'm talking about, I don't know, hot dogs, hamburgers, Salisbury steak, meatloaf, microwave mac and cheese. Because that's what's ethnic to me. Everything else is what I grub every day. But see, when we internalize a way of thinking that doesn't align with the way of our cultural practices, then we begin to function off of that dominant understanding of cultural practice that has very little to nothing to do with me. And that's part of the framework, is that epistemic condition. The way we think and show up has to lean on the cultural saliency and sensibilities of the people that we're serving, not on your interpretation, hood adjacency. Folks be like, well, I lived nearby. Don't even know what the struggle is. I appreciate Thomas, that poem, because, you know, he brought me back when I got to college. I didn't have to learn how to step. Man, you know, every morning getting up after my mom applied for Section 8 and finally got it, you know what I did every day? I got up, I turned up the lights, and I started stepping. The roaches was fierce. I went to academia with a prerequisite in stepping. Folks were like, that Mike, you good. We didn't even do the step yet, and you already know it. I'm just like, you know, I practiced every morning. Diversity wasn't really a term. We have to understand diversity in the context of poverty. Because poverty is the driver, and all the other mechanisms that ism sustains poverty. Racism and race and racialization was created to sustain poverty. Yes. To some degree, actually a large degree, religion was turned around to sustain poverty. I won't go there, but it's kind of the truth. A lot of these other isms were aimed at sustaining poverty. But you see this, if you're familiar with the work, The White Man's Burden, then you also understand that the conversation eventually became about, don't worry about what you are not, worry about what you are. We'll keep those folks in that side of the train track. And we function like that, but then over time, we've internalized it. So when you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, diversity, first of all, wasn't really a thing into the 60s. In the 60s, diversity became a politicized discourse that went beyond diverse chairs, a diverse bouquet of flowers, a diverse architecture of buildings. It now represented a politicized identity that we have to be attentive to. That, and when we talk about it today as representation, the hijacking and consumption of culture, and not with the people or honoring the people. So when people are like, let's have a potluck, bring a food from your own country. You don't even know where I'm from. There's some people that look a certain way, but like they lived in the U.S. 5 generations ago. Some people that look a certain way that have been here, I don't know, since 1619. That's quite a lot of generations. So when folks want to do that, I say, look, I have a great idea. Let's have an American potluck. Y'all bring y'all stuff and let us enjoy y'all. Stop spectacleizing us. I'm going to turn that into an adverb. No different than hood adjacency. And then equity. Look, because everybody got equity twisted. Equity has very little, though connected, to fairness and parity, which is equality. Parity and equality, by way of fairness, is about process and systems and journeys. The equity is in the decision making. You can make all the arguments that you want, but if you know you have underrepresentation, especially at the top, and you run into a cat and they have the same resume as this homie over here, and you still making excuses why he might not be, or she might not be, or they might not be good enough for a position, even though they have the same damn qualifications as the white homie. Or in the case of women, the male. But, we're going to come up with excuses. He's just not a good fit. Throw fit out of your vocabulary. And you know what? For institutions that want to claim DEI, especially around this work that is poverty, if you're going to lean into it and not really act on it, or you're going to bring on your own interpretation of what that should look like through your adjacent lens, then just take it out of your mission. And that way then we don't have to hold you accountable. But so as long as it's a central tenet of your mission, your vision, your objectives, your strategic plan, everything that you do, our role is to hold you accountable to that. Right? And then you have inclusion. I'm going to be real quick on this one. Inclusion, because we talk about it, well, we have a lot of metaphors for inclusion. Pull up a seat at the table. If you don't have one, although respect Shirley Chisholm, because at that time it's like bring your own chair. Get it? Inclusion, let's get beyond this invite and the dancing and the eating. Inclusion is about intentionally privileging voices of erasure and absence. So when you bring that one or two people to the table to have a conversation, their voice should be first and foremost represented in the policy you aim to inform to address whatever it is you're trying to come up with. That is a privileging of what was not there before. And we get into this convo about, alternative facts. I don't even know what to do with that. Expertise is expertise. Interpretations are interpretations. Perspectives are always welcomed, even the worst of them. That's why there's freedom of speech and academic freedom and freedom, right? But at the same time, just because you have a perspective, you're going to be able to share it. If it's off and misaligned with the work, it's likely not going to make its way into the policy. So when we think about this work, and I'm glad that Erica brought up Frantz Fanon, but some other people that you got to know, right? When you think about Cedric Robinson, Black Marxism. You know why his work was vital, even though he cut a lot of slack? Because he said Marxism is not working for us. So, okay, we'll roll with Marxism, but let's blackanize it and create a Marxism for black people. And how does that economic engine of wealth distribution look different than the Marxism that we think fits all universally? Then we got the work of Sartre, Jean-Paul Sartre. And yes, I'm a post-colonial scholar, so Sartre and Fanon and Walsh and Gilroy and all those phenomenal academics who really help us think differently about the way we rupture. But here we are. And I said I was going to keep it real. Look, people, we live in systems that are foul. And yes, there's a lot to appreciate about the U.S. and America and its democracy, because I've been in a lot of places where you can't even talk without just right there getting arrested, killed, whatever it is. And yet, though, we can't continue to remain aspirational, especially in fulfilling an American dream and the pursuit of happiness for everyone, so that we don't end up with, 28% of black folks living in poverty, 8% of white folks living in poverty. Let's reduce it so that there's literally no more than 2%, if that. If that. And then when people go and try to self-sustain and live in different communities, like folks who are like, I'm just going to go off the grid. I'm going to live in the woods. And even when they make it happen, the government still come after them, arrest them, and tell them that that's uninhabitable land. So you can't even go on your own and live on your own but without, folks coming at you and saying, you can't do that. But I'm good, though. I know how to cut my wood. I know how to fish. I know how to, agriculturally, grow some plants. Right? That's too much freedom. That's too much liberation. And understanding that neocolonialism becomes important because what then? What happens beyond representation when representation is so infected and poisoned by white supremacy that even the action and cultural practice itself lends itself to ongoing disproportionate impact and outcomes? So we start with fostering that self-awareness that we all love to do. Right? We don't like to go here because that means that we gotta wrestle with some things. We gotta really look at ourselves. In my case, right, I may be, it's interesting. I'm like this black, brown, Creole, dude, but I'm also a male, and I'm also cisgendered. Right? And I'm also all these identities that have some level of privilege and power that come with it. So how do I wrestle with that to get to where I need to go? especially for leaders and policymakers, and especially understanding the impact that's going to have on marginalized communities. But here's what's going on, really. Let me bring the air of bell hooks into the mix. Sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power. Not because they don't see it, but because they see it and they don't want it to exist. I want you to think about identity crisis. I want you to think about what it means to grow up, go beyond high school, get to college, and find out that 70% of what was told to you was either a lie or a half-truth. Now, it's one thing for people of color to struggle with that because, right, they're the recipients of the misinformation. It's another thing when the partners of the spreading of that information through policy, curriculum, and systems have to wrestle with that level of identity crisis. Because all of a sudden, right, now, for us, we're talking about, well, what am I really? For them, you know, it was a straight shot forward. You're not, don't be Italian, just be white. Don't be Irish, just be white. Don't be Jewish, just be white. But Jewish people got a level of culture that, right, that it didn't just creep in like that as easily as someone who was able to throw that away without the spiritual element of it. You don't have to take my word for it. You could read the works of Ivan Ignatieff. You could read the works of Karen Brucken. You see what I'm saying? And for us, man, we'll figure it out. But that identity crisis, when it sits with dominant identities and power, man, that's like having to revisit yourself entirely. One of the biggest strategies that I use is suspension of disbelief. Here, as I start bringing it to a close. Right, suspension of disbelief is a theatrical term that allows us to consume bias unintentionally, also allows us to enjoy things like film. So when we're watching Optimus Prime, who's up on the screen, fall from a 100-story bridge, and he falls to the ground, and he lands, and nothing happens, and Mark Wahlberg just kind of gets out like nothing happened to him neither, you have two options. You could either be like, all right, man, that was kind of cool. Or you could say, hell no. That's not possible. How the hell did Mark Wahlberg fall with this big piece of metal, probably weighing about 10 tons, and no shatter, no nothing, and traveled from Earth to Mars in 0.5 seconds? Without our ability to suspend our disbelief, then we end up unable and unwilling to lead in inclusive ways that help us climb out of poverty. So when people come and tell us, right, like I could share a story, and then someone comes, they're like, I think it's a little bit much. Might you be exaggerating a little bit? No, bro. Last time I recall, you weren't there. But thank you for telling me how I told my story wrong. Gratitude. Suspension of disbelief is a real important concept. And then lastly, how do we take responsibility and remain accountable to what we say we are and model what we preach? Let's not ask people, especially people from marginalized communities, to engage in certain ways when they themselves see that we ourselves are not acting it. That we validate how people are showing up and understand that a lot of people show up with pain and trauma, and we have to be able to lean into that and to corral with that, because it's not about you. It's about who and how we serve. That we also take, right, this kind of opportunity for growth and learning and continue on. The moment that we think we know it all, we stop living. We also stop serving. Yes. Yes. My biggest teachers are the youth. The youth. I learn more from the youth in 1 hour than I do a month sitting in a group of VPs. Say that. Nothing against VPs, I get it. But the grind is real. Hence, why I learned how to step so good. That we listen courageously, with intent, right? And that we collaborate to that piece before, because nobody's going to do it for you. So that agency, we need to own it. Nobody's just going to come and be like, boom, here. And then that we cultivate trust. We have to lean on that trust and that hope. Without the trust, the hope, the love, that not only our ancestors, but also elders of today. Gratitude to all the elders that are still in the game. A hand of applause, yes. Like for me, if it wasn't for like Dr. Tom Hill and Dr. Laura Rendon or Dr. Keisho Scott or any of these elders whose shoulders we lean on, there's no now. And we have to do it boldly. And so this is the way it happens when you model inclusive leadership and diversity in a way that makes sense. I'm going to finish up with 2 quick stories. I'm going to let you finish the first one for me so you can understand how this works even in the line of poverty. I remember the first time I got straight A's, I was in 7th grade. I went right to the crib, went to Mama. I had chancla in the back, says, Junie, why you got that? I said, Mama, grades, look, I got straight A's. She looked at me, sized me up. I knew exactly what she had behind her hands because she swings that like a boomerang all the time. But I showed her I had straight A's. She looked at me and said, okay, Junie, go ahead, dale. Go out, come back before dark or when dinner's ready. So I go to the hood. I go to my own peoples. I go to my peers. Yo, Lito, B Money. Look at this. Now, they didn't have the same reaction as my mom. Instead, they said, damn, look at Mike. He's trying to be all white. When the hell did intelligence in our own communities become a white thing? Second story in closing. My son came one day from school. He said, yo, Dad, I'm mad. I'm so frustrated today. Now, he said that in his own 7-year-old way at the time. Then I had he was 8. My daughter was 5. She comes to the picture, says, Dad, I'm angry. I said, Papa, what's going on? That's how we talk. Puerto Ricans, we sing. We're like, He said, the lunch lady gave me a piece of pizza, and it had hair on it. Now, you got to take that seriously from an 8-year-old boy, right? That's the validation. You're not like, brush that off. To him, that was everything. That was pepperoni pizza day. I said, Papa, what did you do? Did you go back and tell him? He said, yeah, I did. But she was mean. The lunch lady said that I couldn't have another slice. I said, Papa, well, so what you going to do? He said that I'm going to boycott the cafeteria. Now, on one hand, I'm laughing because this is cute as hell. On the other hand, I'm like, damn, what did I create here? Okay. So he says, Dad, I'm going to need you to start packing my lunch. I said, shit. All of a sudden, I hear this 5-year-old voice come the other side. It's my daughter now. She said, Dad, I'm going to need you to pack my food too. I said, what's up, Mama? I said, what's going on? Are you boycotting the cafeteria too? She stepped back. Sassy as hell, 5-year-old. She said, no, Dad. I'm girl-cutting. If we are to elevate, amplify, get ourselves and our communities, and I say ourselves, right, because it's a collective movement, we must model what we preach. Yes. Complacency and conformity have become poisons to our spirits. Let's own our agency and our collective preservation and determination. Don't look to belong. Look to reclaim. Thank you.